Let's talk about one of the weirdest stories in Hollywood history. The story of a movie so strange, so dark, and so unapologetically itself that it actually got its famous director fired from the very franchise he helped create. We are of course talking about the one and only Batman Returns from 1992.
You know, it's a wild paradox when you think about it. How on earth does a movie become a commercial disappointment that almost sinks a billion-dollar franchise and also a beloved masterpiece that people now say was totally ahead of its time? To figure that out, we have to go back and really understand the massive shadow cast by the first film.
All right, so let's set the stage. Part 1, a reluctant return. After the first Batman movie just completely took over the world in 1989, a sequel wasn't just a good idea, it was a total no-brainer for Warner Bros. They wanted to get another one out like yesterday. But they had one tiny little problem. Their star director, Tim Burton, wanted absolutely nothing to do with it.
And to really get why the studio was so desperate, you have to look at this number. $1.5 billion. That's how much the first movie made when you factor in everything. Not just ticket sales, but all the toys, the t-shirts, the whole shebang. It wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural and financial juggernaut. They weren't just making a sequel, they were trying to catch lightning in a bottle for a second time.
And this right here, this quote from Tim Burton himself, tells you everything you need to know about where his head was at. He thought most sequels were dumb. In fact, he found making the first Batman to be a pretty frustrating experience. For him, there was just no point in coming back unless he could do something completely new and different. He was so not interested in just making the same movie all over again.
So what happened? Well, Burton basically had the studio over a barrel. They needed him. So he came back to them with a list of demands. You can see the clash right here. Warner Bros. Wanted to use the scripts they already had, bring back the same writer, and keep things on a safe, familiar track. Burton's condition? Throw it all in the trash. He wanted a new writer, a weirder and much darker tone, and, this was the big one, total, absolute creative control. They said yes. And that one decision, well, it changed everything.
Which brings us to our next part, a very Burton sequel. Okay, so Tim Burton has the keys to the kingdom. He can do whatever he wants. And what he wanted was not a superhero sequel. Nope. He was going to make a Tim Burton film that just so happened to feature Batman. And it was going to be personal, very strange, and a whole lot darker.
First things first, the script. Burton hired Daniel Waters, the guy who wrote the incredibly dark cult comedy Heathers. Now, Waters wasn't even a fan of the first movie or the comics, which was perfect. Together, they cooked up a story that wasn't really about a big evil plot. It was about the broken minds of the villains. Think about it. Penguin wasn't a mob boss anymore. He was this tragic, monstrous outcast, a dark mirror of Bruce Wayne's own orphan story. Catwoman became this amazing symbol of female rage. And they even invented a whole new villain, the corporate monster Max Schreck, to say, hey, sometimes the worst villains are the ones in suits.
So how do you make a movie look like a psychological breakdown? Well, Burton went back in film history and pulled from this incredible style called German Expressionism. The whole point of it was to make the world on screen reflect the chaos happening inside a character's mind. So everything is distorted, full of harsh shadows. It's all about a vibe, an unsettling feeling, not reality. And that idea was poured into every inch of Gotham City. The production designer, Bo Welch, literally threw away the old sets and started from scratch. This new Gotham was a monster. It was inspired by that German expressionist style, but also by the cold, imposing look of fascist architecture. The skyscrapers are like these massive, oppressive statues that turn the streets below into dark, cramped canyons. The city itself feels cruel and twisted, just like the characters living.
Okay, so you've got Tim Burton over here deep in his lab crafting this gothic psychological art film. But at the exact same time, the Warner Bros. Marketing department was doing something very different. They were getting ready to sell Batman Returns as the biggest, happiest, family-friendly event of the summer. You can probably see the collision course forming, right?
And I mean, just look at the scale of this marketing push. It was absolutely massive. McDonald's went all in, turning thousands of its restaurants into mini Gotham cities and pumping out millions of Happy Meal toys. Diet Coke, Choice Hotels, everybody was on board. The entire campaign, costing tens of millions of dollars, was aimed right at kids and their parents. The only problem? That wasn't the movie they were selling.
So imagine, you pack up the family, grab your Batman-themed Happy Meals, and sit down in the theater expecting a fun adventure. And then, this movie starts. Parents were absolutely horrified. This quote from the New York Times just nails it. The movie was packed with dark humor, sexual innuendo, and really disturbing stuff about kids being abandoned and murdered. Families felt completely misled, and the backlash was immediate and, well, furious. And all that controversy, it hit them right in the wallet. Now, don't get me wrong, the movie still made a boatload of money. But, and this is a big but, it made almost $150 million less than the first one. For a studio like Warner Bros., a drop-off that huge, combined with all the angry letters from parents, that's not a success. That's a five-alarm fire. The fallout was fast, and it was brutal. The studio was in full-on damage control mode. The public relations nightmare, the disappointing box office, someone had to take the fall for it. And they looked right at the guy who had made the weird, dark movie in the first place.
It really all comes down to this one quote, which was leaked from a Warner Bros. Executive just a few weeks after the movie opened. "It's too dark. It's not a lot of fun." The Tim Burton experiment was officially over. The verdict from the studio was clear. His vision was just not compatible with a 4-quadrant blockbuster. That's just fancy Hollywood talk for a movie that can sell tickets and toys to absolutely everyone.
So the studio slammed on the brakes and did a hard pivot. It was like a domino effect. First, the intense backlash from parents. Then, the merchandise sales tanked. So the studio hired a new director, Joel Schumacher, and gave him one simple instruction. Make it lighter, make it funnier, make it more toyetic. Burton was pushed out. And the final nail in the coffin? Michael Keaton got the script for the next movie, saw how campy it was, and just walked away. The Burton era was...
But here's the beautiful, ironic twist in this whole story. That is not where it ends. Not by a long shot. Which brings us to our final section, an enduring Christmas classic. Because as the official Batman franchise moved on into the world of neon and bat nipples, something really funny started to happen to Batman Returns. People started to rediscover it.
I mean, just look at this journey. In '92, it's a divisive mess. But then 1997 rolls around and Batman and Robin happens, and suddenly a lot of people started looking back and thinking, you know what? Maybe that weird Burton movie was actually pretty great. By the 2000s, critics were calling it one of the first true auteur superhero films. And now it's not just a cult classic. It's considered a genuine masterpiece. Oh, and yeah, it's totally a beloved Christmas movie now. Who saw that coming?
And you can literally see that change right here in the numbers. Back then, audiences gave it a Cinema score of a B, which is pretty much a polite shrug. But today, it's sitting at a massive 82% on Rotten Tomatoes with critics. What was once seen as a misstep is now considered one of the very best Batman films ever made.
This quote totally nails the modern view of the film. It's not seen as a failed sequel anymore. It's seen as the first time a major studio handed a superhero franchise to a true artist and just let them go wild. It wasn't a product built by a committee to sell Happy Meals. It was a deeply personal, totally unfiltered Tim Burton film. It was his vision through and through.
So in the end, maybe that's the real legacy of Batman Returns. Maybe it's the first great anti-franchise film. It's a huge, blockbuster sequel that completely rejected everything a sequel was supposed to be. It was tragic instead of heroic, it was weird instead of safe, and it was deeply personal instead of commercial. It broke every single rule, and because of that, it left behind a legacy that's way more fascinating and timeless than any safe movie ever could.
Hey, if you enjoyed going down this cinematic rabbit hole with us, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Daily Wonders. We've got a lot more deep dives just like this one on the way, and you are not going to want to miss them. Thanks for watching.